Hi, everyone, and welcome to day 9 of Savvy, Sexy, Social Vlog Every Day in August. And tonight, I'm going to talk about why do we believe what we believe? And does that really serve us and who we are today as opposed to who we were when we learned this? I'm Alex. This is Tea and Transformation. And let's begin. So, the question that I wanted to ask tonight was why do we believe what we believe? Where did those beliefs come from? Psychologists say that our worldview is set and in place by the time we are 4 years old. So at 5 years old, we are very clear whether or not the world is a safe place, whether or not it's a dangerous place, whether or not our basic health and safety will be looked after, whether or not school will be fun, or whether or not school will be a pain. We are clear about the roles of our parents and other adults, and whether or not we enjoy being around them or not being around them. So we know this by the time we're 5. And then what happens is we live in with our families or whatever that family structure looks like for ourselves. And we, no matter who our parents are or what our parents do, we trust them. They're the people we look up to. Our world is very small, very narrow when we're young children. And it begins to expand as we go to school and we meet new people and we meet new families and so on and so forth. But our fundamental basic beliefs are very much set in place by the time we're 4 years old. If you live in a world where you think that the world is a dangerous place, you are always going to be on the outlook for the next smack, the next hit, the next bummer, something like that. And that, as you grow up, is going to inform how it is that you live your life. The difficulty with that is that when we're young and we're learning these belief structures, we don't have a whole lot of filter. We don't have a whole lot of skepticism. So it just kind of goes in there unfiltered and it stays in there. And then we kind of forget that it's there. So there's this operating system going on in the back of our brain that's always running, always telling us what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're seeing, how we're adjusting, how we're seeing things, what our perception is, and we're not aware that it's running. So I don't know, I guess it's like one of those background computer programs that is always running on our computers that we're not really aware of. It's there, doesn't show up anywhere, but it's constantly running. And so we have that going on with our belief structures. So what does that do for us? It can be really limiting. It can be very liberating, but what I'm concerned about is the belief structures that are limiting that we are not aware of, that we're not thinking about. So I don't know if you've all heard this story, but I think it's been around a few times. But it's a mother and a daughter, and they're cooking an Easter dinner, and they're going to cook a ham. And the daughter has learned how to cook this ham from her mother, and the dinner is at her daughter's house. And so as her and her mother are preparing the dinner, her mother cuts the ends off the ham and puts it in the roasting pan and prepares to put it in the oven. And the daughter says to the mother, "Mom, why do we cut off the ends of the ham like that?" And Mom says, "Well, gee, I don't really know. I learned it from my mother." And so a little bit later on in the day, when Grandma comes over for dinner, the granddaughter asks the grandmother, "Grandma, why do we cut off the ends of the ham? Because Mom cuts them off, and she says she learned that from you." And the grandmother goes, "Oh, well, I don't cut the ends of the ham off now because I don't need to. When your mother was growing up, I had a very small roasting pan and I couldn't fit the ham in there. So I'd cut a little bit off each end so that it would fit in the roasting pan." So there's the kind of belief structure that made perfect sense in the beginning in that situation, but the daughter picked it up and carried it on without really filtering why that behavior was happening and was passed on down to her daughter. So we're now at the third generation that is cutting the ends off the ham, but two of them have no reason, no understanding of why that might be and whether or not it's even applicable to their situation. So I'm going to tell you a story that happened to a friend of mine. You know, when we're all little and we hear this story that no matter how high up you hold a cat, you hold them up with their back on, upside down, and you drop them, they'll turn in the air and land on their feet. So my girlfriend was about 6 and decided she was going to try that with her kitty. And she went partway up the stairs between the first floor and the second floor, had her cat, leaned over the banister, and had the cat upside down and dropped it. Well, the cat didn't turn and land on its feet. It actually landed on its back. Her mother was in the hallway and observed this and was horrified. And for 30 years, my girlfriend lived with this image of her mother being horrified with her, and she believed that her mother was upset, angry, and disappointed with her for 30 years. They were talking about this incident one day, and her mother said, "Oh, no, honey, I wasn't upset with you. I was horrified because I was worried the cat had hurt itself." So for 30 years, she'd carried this burden that her mother was disappointed and upset with her over this incident, and it wasn't based in fact at all. So we have these structures that inform how we're behaving, and we oftentimes don't look at them, and we don't understand why they're there. Now, part of that issue is because it's also seemingly very difficult for us to separate ourselves from our behavior and stand outside of ourselves and observe what it is that we're doing, and to be able to ask without a lot of huge emotional load what it is that we're doing and why it is that we're doing, and to not be afraid to look at the circumstance and the situation around our belief structure and to decide whether or not it's valid. A belief that we had when we were 5 years old doesn't necessarily mean it's still valid at 45 or at 55. So that if we're not evolving and changing and examining our belief structure, how do we ever break away from those 5-year-old ears that heard things, didn't really understand what was being said in many cases, and we came to a decision, and now that decision informs how we act. So I think it's really important for us to examine what it is that we do and why it is that we do it in that particular way. So I guess my final word here is about that tonight. I want to use one more situation. I think that in the United States right now, and you have to understand I'm not an American, I live in Canada, that the really good thing about your president is that he's really highlighting a lot of things you don't like about yourselves. You have a president who has very high likability and retention rate amongst a very specific class of Republican. And my understanding is that his base is 30%, maybe even a little less, and of the overall population. But within a particular group, that rating rate is very high. And it's also my understanding that for people who are hardcore Trump supporters, no matter what this man says, they believe it is absolute fact and truth. And my understanding is that it's as if you cannot even hardly speak to these people, because it's as if you're speaking Japanese or French to them, in that you're speaking English. They have no idea what it is you're saying. They don't understand it. They don't understand why you're saying it. It doesn't make any sense to them. But what your president says to them, they believe. and it informs their decisions about how they're going to behave and act. And I think it's a really good way of looking at how our belief structures can be so ingrained and so embedded that it's difficult to break those chains unless we're willing to look at them realistically with a mind to go, does this serve me? Is it borne out in the community? Is it factual? Does it make any sense at all to anybody who's older than 5? So I think that it's like there's a real opportunity right now, just sort of worldwide. So here's how we go from the micro to the macro. There's a real opportunity worldwide to look at what is it we believe? Does it inform the kind of decisions and action in our community? Because remember, we're going from the inner to the outer. The point that I was trying to make here is that there's an opportunity here now for us to take a look at ourselves and what it is that we believe, why it is that we believe it, does it serve us, and how are we going to approach the next few years in terms of our global community. Because clearly what we believe on a micro level has huge impact on a macro level. Excuse me. So I want to say, I guess in closing, I want to say, if we only seek out information that confirms what we already believe, are we really learning anything? All right, so that's it for tonight. I want to say again, please subscribe. I hope you view the video, like it, and please comment. I don't know, like for me, I think that I'm kind of talking about some rather serious subjects and topics that maybe we might want to engage in. So I'm hoping that what you'll do is engage in them with me in the comments section around this video. So please subscribe. You know where the button is. It's down there. Right next to it is the little bell that will give you a notification when I've got something new to publish. You know where the like is. There it is. And I will see you all tomorrow at Savvy Sexy Social Vlog every day in August, day 10. Tonight, this is day 9. So I'm Alex, and this is Tea and Transformation. I'll see you all tomorrow. Good night.